Good day. Welcome back to the course research methodology. Today's session is on Unit 15, Interpretation of Data. So we were discussing about the entry of data, preparing the data, coding the data, and after the data analysis is being done by any of the softwares or manually, interpretation of the data is very, very important. Today's session will actually be on that part. So what I'll be doing is in this session, I will actually talk to you about that interpretation of data, and I will show you how data has been interpreted in a report as well. So what do you mean by interpretation? So before even we start this, I will like to tell you one small story. Like there was a person who was doing research in a laboratory. So what happened was like he actually cut one of the foot of frog and he said jump. So the frog actually started to jump to some extent. Then he cut another leg also and he said jump jump. So the frog actually was not able to jump. Okay. Then after that he wrote an interpretation that when the legs of the frog are cut, the frog becomes deaf. So the interpretation is very, very important because the understanding of the researcher is clearly depicted by the interpretation what he makes in after the study is being done. Because your data collection part, your analysis part, everything will go waste. You will not be answering correctly to the problem statement what we have defined. Either it will not cater to the management decision as well as to the research question what we have posed. So interpretation refers to the task of drawing inferences from the collected facts after an analytical or experiment has been done. In fact, it is a search for broader meaning of the research finding. So what does this pattern talk about? So when you look at the stars in the sky, based on our imagination, we will connect the dots. So you need to interpret it and extrapolate it so that it gives meaningful inferences to the decision makers. So this task of interpretation has two major aspects. The first one is the effort to establish continuity in research through linking the results of a given study with another study. So you can actually relate it to the previous studies as well. And it is about the establishment of some exploratory concepts. So in one sense, interpretation is concerned with relationships within the collected data, partially overlapping analysis. So interpretation also extends beyond the data of the study to include the results of other research, theory, and hypothesis. So we need to bring into your mind when you do research, the research, the research is called as application oriented study. So we need to give inferences relating to the existing body of knowledge. So why interpretation is very important? What is the importance of interpretation? Interpretation is essential for the simple reason that the usefulness and utility of research findings lie in proper interpretation. So that's what I told you while starting of the session. So it's being considered a basic component of research process because of this reasons, which I'm going to state now. It is through interpretation that the researcher can well understand the abstract principle that works beneath his findings. Through this, he can link up his findings with those of other studies having the same abstract principle and thereby can predict about the concrete world of events. The fresh inquiries can test these predictions later on. So this way, the continuity in research can be maintained. Interpretation leads to establishments of exploratory concepts that can serve as a guide for future research studies. It opens new avenues of intellectual adventures and it stimulates actually the quest for more knowledge. So we keep on relating whatever we have studied in the literature and we see why this data is talking like that. What is the prediction we are able to find out? Okay. So when you are able to make meaningful interpretation, when you are able to find out something after doing the analysis, you shout, Eureka, I have found out this thing. Then the time and effort what you have put in will become worthwhile. Okay, so researcher can better appreciate only those interpretations why his findings are what they are, and can make others to understand the real significance of his research findings. So it should be understood even to a layman. So the interpretation of the findings of exploratory research study often results into hypothesis for experimental research. So when you explore, like it's just looking it in a bird's eye view. So it further needs to experimental research where you come out with the cause and effect, and such interpretation is involved in the transition from exploratory research to experimental research. So the results of one research will be the direction for future research. So that becomes a research gap for the next research what they start working on. So since an exploratory study does not have a hypothesis to start with, the findings of such a study has to be interpreted on a post factum basis, in which the case interpretation is technically described as post factum interpretation. So now here comes the techniques of interpretation, which involves the steps. The researcher must be able to give reasonable explanation of the relationships which he has found out between the variables of study. He must interpret the lines of relationship in terms of underlying process. So we have got some base theory, and must try to find out the threat of uniformity that lies under the surface layer of his diversified research findings. So you can apply any number of tests of significance, or you can do measures of central tendency, or you can go in for the higher level of analysis using any type of software. But if you are not able to find out a common pattern within the same data what you have got, and if one finding of a test is going to contradict with the other finding with the same set of data, and you're not able to generalize the data, then somewhere it's wrong. So right from the early, like starting from the reliability, like all things should fall in line. So there will be certain variables, that it will deviate from the current study. It will not be significant at all throughout the study. So this common factor which you identify, throughout the study, it's a important implications for the managerial decisions. Okay, so this is the technique of how you generalize, and it should be done and the concepts being formulated out of this particular research activity. And extraneous information, if collected during the study, must be considered while interpreting the final results of the research study, for it may be proven to be a key factor in understanding the problem under consideration. Likewise, it is advisable before embarking upon final interpretation, you need to consult with the previous study. And likewise, you can even follow Delphi method. You can talk to people, experts, who is frank and honest, and will not hesitate to point out omissions and errors in logical argumentation. So supposing if you take a PhD type of studies, like we have got a research advisory committee. So you can present before the committee the findings of your study, and that committee will actually analyze about what the findings are all about. They will find out if there is any omissions, if there is any error in logical argumentation. So what we recommend is, the more you present about your study to the experts, the more inputs you will be getting. So such a consultation will result in correct interpretation, and it will enhance the utility of research result. So what happens is that there is nowadays a fantasy that they will try to bring in higher level of analysis. So people will think that if I apply Amos, then yeah, it's coming out very good. So just for the sake of you wanted to showcase that you are able to apply a tool, it is not at all needed. Like if it doesn't give a meaningful interpretation, and if it's not needed to answer to your research question, then the test itself will become null and void. So the researcher must also accomplish the task of interpretation only after considering all relevant factors affecting the problem, in order to avoid false generalization. So we are going to generalize the entire findings the total population. So we should be very careful while doing it so. So you must not be in a hurry while interpreting the results, for quite often the conclusions which appear to be all right at the beginning may not be at all accurate and precise as well. Okay. So now what I'll do is I will show you example of how a research finding would be. Look at this. This is how the interpretations will be. Okay. This is data analysis and interpretation. See, first you could see a table. So whatever you get it as an output from any of the tool you apply, you cannot actually give it in a raw form because it should be meaningful. See, in this tabulation, this talks about the reliability of a study which was on social entrepreneurship. So you can see the reliability values, the Cronbach's alpha value, and you need to write about that. So this particular table demonstrates the scale's reliability. So normally, if you look at the table, we entertain reliability which is more than 0.8. But then in you could see, no, in three cases, it is only above 0.7. So supposing if you take this particular variable, social entrepreneurship intention, it is only 0.706. The reliability is only that much. So from here, it starts like which particular scale you can take it forward and which particular scale is more reliable from the tool what you have constructed. Supposing you take network has got reliability of 0.92. Okay, so you can have an interpretation that when you take into direction for future research, so you can say that if anyone wants to adapt it, you can recommend network as the scale what you have tested already. Others can actually use the scale for drafting their own questionnaire. Okay, so likewise, we actually the next one is interpreting the descriptive statistics. Here we have reported the measures of central tendency and measures of dispersion. So here the skewness and kurtosis value, you have to state, they are very well between -1 to +1. Therefore, it shows that the data for the constructs used in the study is normally distributed. So in last session, I told you, the first and foremost thing what you need to check up is the normality. And only few things are being negatively skewed. So you can see here. Okay. So how far it is negatively skewed. So here comes the demographic profile of the respondents, those who are ED students members. So you can see like it is a representative sample with various demographics, and you could see in bold the most important or the predominant group in this. So the target was only UG, so it has got more percentage over here. So you have to actually highlight all those things. The negligible one, you can leave it off. Okay. So this is how you write it in the interpretation. Fine. So you write about the family background. If they run a family business, then you can say that they have got a family business. And that is the reason why the students are doing or having the insight of becoming an entrepreneur. Okay, so that's how you talk about it. So here, venture creation and financial components of ED cell. So we find out whether they wanted to become an entrepreneur just to make profit or for social cause. So people were telling that it was for both. So that intention is there amongst the students so that you could bring in. So if you provide a proper environment for them, then you can bring in more of entrepreneurs who gives concern to the social issues or the social problems. And likewise, the communication platform, the networking part, what they are mostly involved into it is particularly they say 2K kids are always into Instagram. So through that only, actually, supposing a student wants to take up online shopping, or he wants to use social media for actually publicizing the product what he is doing, then they can use Instagram particularly to influence the youngsters. Okay, so this becomes very meaningful, like you have to correlate it, and you can see, like this is a general understanding or the statistics what the social media gives, isn't it? So that has to come into your mind. Okay, now this is how this is tabulated. So I'm showing you all this. See, look at this. This is a chi-square test, the results of chi-square test. The alternate hypothesis stated here. Okay, the test has been applied now. It has been tabulated. So now you could see the chi-square value given over here. So after you get it, you write the interpretation here. Okay. So as per gender, you can find out how many of them are statistically associated, and how and in which variable are not statistically associated is being given over here. Okay. So for ANOVA, so look at how the hypothesis is framed here. There exists a significant difference in mean values of social entrepreneurship variables based on the demography of the respondents and the social venture capital creation components. So there is a alternate hypothesis stated over here, and then we have tabulated it. Okay, and you could see that here the gender wise it is there is a statistical significance, isn't it or not? The gender part, gender, post-studying, family type, it is there. But look at the age, level of graduation, and then family owning a business. There is no significant difference. Okay, so that is how you have to interpret it. Fine. So this is how you interpret ANOVA, and after that we have got other test as well. See, supposing you take multiple regression. Multiple regression is a dependency technique, causal effect. So what is that we do here? We formulate an hypothesis based on the previous, it's a model development actually. Okay. So what we do here is, according to theory, the social innovation comes from social vision, networking, social entrepreneurship intention, and personality trait. So we put the social innovation as the dependent variable, social vision, network, intention, and personality trait as the independent variable. Now we found out from the model summary, you can see here the value is 0.661. Adjusted R square value is 0.661, which means that the dependency is there and it is also significant. And the dependency is because of it, 66%. The variation is because of that. And likewise, we can draft the equation based on the coefficients table. Here you can see the beta weights. Networking has got the highest weight. Okay. And all the variables are significant. That's what we can see here. So look at this. I've told you, no, regression is actually a line. So this PP plot shows that when you plot all the data, it comes in a form of a line. So we have come out with an equation of a line, where line equation is y is equal to mx plus c. No, same thing is been put up over here with multiple variables, and you can predict it. See, look at this. The social innovation coming out of the data, you have the coefficients and the constant. We actually include that in the equation, and we have come out with the equation. This is the model how we have developed. So in future, if we wanted to find out how far a student is got innovation, like what you can do is you can ask the questions only about his networking, his personality trait, his social vision, and his social entrepreneurship intention. Only with those data, you can find out the social innovation straight away. So you develop a model and you can keep this model and you can use it for the forthcoming things, because here the data was more than 1300. So you have developed a model and you have fixed up the coefficients, and you can find out how far the social innovation is there between one student to the other student. Okay, this is how you have to write the interpretation and give it to the people, the decision makers or the policy makers. Okay, I think this is more than enough for you. Thank you so much. See you in the next session.